Right. Hi guys, how you going? How's it going? Sorry.
Good. How are
Uh,
you?
Hey, Chris.
good.
Good.
So let's see if we have less crashes today, which I doubt since we're gonna be dealing with X-Gen. So let's see if we can get this nice and easy. Just to make sure, I actually reset my machine here for a second and open a brand new scene. So hopefully gonna be all reset to go. So let's try this. Um, so yesterday, just before I start here, I noticed that my wife has this little stains in here, like little browns in between the green in there. So I kind of like I painted that. It's a very simple map. I painted this little map in here. So obviously both are the same right now. So I have to add some variation to the second one. But I just did this as a test and actually added some interesting stuff. And this one already has the eye pretty tight against the skin, like we did yesterday. So you can see it's a little bit different from what we had before. Starting to work, and you can see a little bit of that lid that I added in there. If I do a super close up, you're probably going to be able to see more. But for the eyelashes, so that's basically what we're going to be doing today. We're going to be doing some eyelashes, some hair, nose hair, and then some of the peach fuzz, and probably save the eyebrows and also the hair for next week. But we're going to start doing this, and also with the information you're going to get about this stuff we're going to be doing, you can actually start the hair if you want to do that, because it's going to be covering similar stuff anyway. And basically, like I saved the scene with the eyelashes in there, so we can actually copy the settings, so we can get the right thickness. Probably in her case, going to be a little bit thicker than this. But yeah, I have everything saved in the scene right here. So I'm just going to hide them for now. So let's hide all those guys, the entire hair, everything. So let's start this thing. Let's get like a brand new perspective here, and let's do select camera, and let's just set my camera to like a, let's see, like a nice focal length, like maybe 100, so I get this a little bit more flat like this. And so what we're going to be doing is just like going to start easy, right? Like if you guys don't have any you know skills when it comes like to XGen, if you're new at XGen, this class should help you guys like today. But if you have a ton of experience, then excuse me for my mistakes, because I'm, everything I do, like I said, I'm not a specialist in anything. I just do things that in the context they work all together, right? There are all kinds of ways of grooming. And one of them, like people use a lot, is use a scalp. So basically, like they just duplicate the object and then they cut a piece of it. You probably saw many tutorials like this. You cut a piece of it and then you basically like you groom that piece, right? And then some people actually use the entire mesh, just a copy of it, and they groom it in the mesh. So they use that one as the one that's gonna hold all the hairs and everything. I use the actual mesh, and there's like there's an advantage of that, and a disadvantage as well. So the advantage is that the only thing I have to do if I bring something new here, for example, if I'm still changing my model like I'm constantly doing, I can just bring it at any time and just use a blend shape and just like conform to it, and that's it, right? I don't need to do anything else. That's the reason why I was able to actually get those eyelashes for free, right? Because it was simply like I blend shaped the model that was here before, which was Ray Harryhausen, or no, actually in this case was Stan, and then I stole the eyelashes because the topology was fairly in the same spot. So that's the advantage, right? You can just like simply import stuff, you start from there. But the disadvantage is that you cannot paint across multiple UDIMs. So for example, like if you're working with areas, like you're painting like areas of influence and stuff like that for your clumps, then in this case here you're gonna get in trouble because Amaya doesn't accept like painting across UDIMs. You have to have a single UV, right? So if that's your intention to use those areas, which I'm not gonna be using here, there are plenty of tutorials you can find online, and also you can also you can simply duplicate your model if you want and just create like a single UV for the entire thing. So you can actually just group all the UVs, right? You cannot, for example, like if you duplicate this guy here, you can go to modeling editors under Windows and then UV editor, and you can use something like let's do it here. You can just select all the UVs, and you can go to something like layout. So if you go to layout here, making sure you have like all the settings working. In this case here is just distribution in 1 and 1. So if I just do this, preserving the 3D ratios, of course, then you're gonna have all the things like packed into a single UV, right? So you can do that if you're planning to use those masks, right? But I'm not gonna be using here. It's gonna be more straightforward. And I don't know actually if the fact that I'm using multiple UDIMs is actually causing more crashes. But I don't know, because I've seen people complaining about the crashes anyway, independently of the number of UV. So I think it's just like a pathological thing from XGen. But today we have like a positive attitude, and probably we're not going to get any crashes. Let's think forward. So so to groom the eyelashes, first some informations, right? About like the technical stuff about the hair itself. The number of hairs a person has in average for the scalp is about like 100,000 to 150,000 follicles, right? And then there's no information about the number of mini, like the vellus hair, which is basically like the peach fuzz that we call, right? There's no information that I could find with a precise number about that, you know, it's like, or approximate number about that. The peach fuzz covers our entire body, so apparently we have like 5 million of them, like all kinds of hairs combined, about 5 million covering our entire bodies. And the peach fuzz is this tiny little thing, you know, it's like the translucent stuff. You can barely see sometimes, depending on the person. You know, it's like if you're in the sun, you're normally gonna see they are translucent, very, very pale looking, right? Like almost blonde. And the function is to actually help to dissipate the sweat, right? Like you sweat and it goes into those little tiny micro hairs in there, and basically like the little drops just evaporate from there, right? It just helps to collect it and regulate like the temperature of your body, obviously. So it has a nice function, you know. And they change over time as well, depending on what happens. It can be like through an illness that happens, you know, it's like some of them make them grow and become more of like the permanent hair, like the actual hair that I have, for example, like my beard here, right? But basically they start as vellus hair. So for example, like if you see like a little boy and you look at over his lips, he has a lot of vellus hair, a little bit longer. It's kind of like almost like a promise of a mustache, right? It's just a promise. And then you're gonna see this type of like baby hair that we call, right? It's kind of like baby hair. You get like a newborn baby, and you see the ears look like monkey ears sometimes. There's a ton of micro hair in there. Sometimes they're pretty long. And then there's all other types of hair, right? Like for example, a little baby, if there's some kind of like imbalance in the hormones and stuff with the mother, sometimes the baby is born like with a ton of hair, like black hair, right? It looks like almost like a monkey. And then over time, that hair actually falls, and then it becomes just the vellus hair. But the opposite happens as well. For example, like I mentioned, like a little boy, as he gets into puberty, right? Those little hairs going to start growing more and more and getting more into like becoming thicker and deeper, right? Because the vellus hair doesn't share the same network as the actual hair shares. It's kind of like it's a more superficial thing. So I cannot have a precise number. What we can do is look at references and see how much we can add. But the fact is, like, there are a ton of them in the face. So we're going to be trying to match that later. And when it comes to the eyelashes obviously, in her case here, going to have to do some research, you know, it's like, because, I mean, like her eyelashes are super long, as you can tell here, right? And she's not using any extensions, I believe. I think they're naturally long. Our boys have the same problem, or not a problem, but I mean, like, they're super nice, super beautiful. But yeah, they have very long eyelashes. I do have some long eyelashes too, so it's all a part of the family. And but the thing is, like, she's using some mascara in there, and I'm not sure about the approach I'm gonna use. I might have to convert them to polygons, extrude, and then sculpt to add some kind of like the little chunks and stuff from the mascara. Or I can just keep completely natural, which should be nicer, actually. You know, just I can just exaggerate the thickness slightly and just try to get a similar result like this. And then talking about the hair, I got some information online, previous classes as well. But just so you know, like the number of hairs for the eyelashes themselves, all combined should be about between 450 and 600. little follicles. And the distribution is about like the top have double the amount as the bottom has. So each one of the eyelids, like the top ones, each one is gonna have like between 150 and 200 little follicles. And then each one in the bottom is gonna be half of that. So between like 75 and 100. So if you combine both, like all together, for both eyes, you're gonna have between 450 and 600. So we're gonna be keeping that in mind because when you start the grooming in XGen, we have to actually tell XGen how many hairs it has to grow for us as a starting point. And then obviously you can play with the percentage and everything, increase if it's looking too bald, or decrease if it's looking too bushy, right? So we're gonna be dealing with that as well. So to start here, let's just let's hide some things. Let's hide the eyes. Let's keep this one pretty clean like that. And then, so the interface that I prefer is to actually click one of those presets here. It's the same for Maya 2018 and 2018 and 19. So you just click this XGen interactive groom preset right here. And that should bring this interface. That's the one I use the most. So you have your model attributes down here and the tools, the tool settings down here. And then everything that's concerning the interactive hair, it's all in this tab. And then you still have your outliner in here. So for those classes, I'm teaching only interactive hair. I know that a lot of people use the core XGen, and I know you have a lot of control using that. You know, it's like especially with masks and stuff. But most of the stuff you can do with it, you can do it in interactive. But the interactive to me, it's more. I think it matches more my style of working because, like I said, like everything is more artistic and free. You know, it's like it's. The technicalities I use, of course, to get a ballpark about stuff, but I mean, everything I have a ton of freedom to experiment with. So I think it feels better, that gap, you know? It's like kind of like, okay, I want to actually be able to sculpt the hair I'm creating, you know? And with interactive, you can create like multiple layers. Like I'm gonna show you, add modifiers and stuff like that, and everything you can sculpt, you know? It's like you can just like with the brush very easily just like change the form, the masses and everything. So that's why I prefer the interactive. But one of my students, I think from June, he was having a big trouble with the interactive, was crashing his machine all the time. So he actually forced himself to learn core, and he did a beautiful job. The hair looks really good with core. So if you face a problem like that, then you might want to try core. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be teaching both because I don't know that much of the core to be able to teach. At least not at this point. So I'm gonna be teaching you the interactive one, which is the fun one actually. So to start here, let's just make sure that our model is completely symmetrical in terms of topology. By now, we should know that, right? We're sculpting for a while now, for the past couple of weeks. So make sure that it's completely symmetrical because you're gonna need to use symmetry here to select some faces. So in Maya, you have this tab in here that's called symmetry, obviously. So you're just gonna expand this one and I'm gonna click topology. So if you click that one, now you can pick, you're gonna see like there is this little selection. You just pick one edge right in the middle. Make sure that's the middle. And then now it's ready for selection, right? So the way I'm gonna do this, let's try to do one at a time. So I'm gonna do the top eyelid first. Obviously, you're gonna have to do the best you can to actually make sure that the lid, like the edge loop, is following. You know, it's like a certain continuous area, right? I try to avoid like having like this line going up and down. So it's kind of like a continuous line in there. It's nicer. You see that mine here is disconnected from the bottom. Ideally, I would have both of them at the same level, but I didn't do that. So, other than that, I mean, like I always groom both separately anyway. So I'm not gonna care about that. So I'm gonna just like deselect some of them. And let me just look at her eyelids in there. It seems like she grows the tiny little hairs all the way close to the, you know, it's like they pass the area of the carunculum in there, very slightly. But those guys here are gonna be super tiny. So I'm gonna keep some of them like that. And I'm gonna deselect the bottom ones all the way. Let's see what I can get here. So both sides are symmetrical right now. So let's try to grow, let's see how far. Maybe Yeah, maybe around here is a good. I'm not gonna grow too much in there because I can actually bend them down, so they're gonna look like they're longer, but going lower, but they're not. So now I have the edge selected. So the way I select is just like right click, and then you click edge, right, with your model. It has to be under this mode here, which is like, it's like, it's not the component mode, it's the object mode. Actually, this is the object mode, yeah. So if you select right click and then edge, you can just double click. You click, select one edge and then go all the way to the other side and double click and select another one. So if I needed to do this manually, what I just did is I would just select that guy and I would just go, let's see if I picked the right one. No, now I messed up. Okay, the next one, this one. What? Well, let's just go in the sequence here again. Yeah, well, to select a sequence is basically like you select one and then go follow that line and select, double click another one. In this case, you're selected for both for me. But to go all the way around, then yeah, you're gonna have to guess which one is that. In this case, I just did the entire loop and just selected the bottom one, should be fine. So to transform the selection of the edge into polygons, you just press Control F11. So that converts from edge to polygon. But I normally expand this some more, because a common mistake is to actually have the eyelashes all in a single line. And if you look at the even in the mirror, you're gonna see that there's plenty of buffer, so they grow kind of like, it's like up and down. So you're gonna see like in different lines. It's not like a continuous line. You're gonna see like them growing in different places from different places. So I'm gonna just grow one time more here. So now I have like four edges in there. In my case, in your case, it might look a little different than that. And then I'm gonna grow from here. So you see, like in relation to the bordering here, I'm starting to grow some of them under the edge right there, but not by much, right? I just wanna make sure that I can go all the way there, but without going down too much, like too much from underneath. And then that should be a good spot to start with. So right now I have both sides selected. Let's start our first grooming here. So let's see, the number I had was like between 150 and 200 per eyelash, per eyelid. So that would be 300 to 400 total. I'm gonna go more towards the, it's like the high number because it seems like she has a ton of eyelashes. So I'm gonna go for the 400, so 200 in each one of them. So to create this, you just go to Create around here in this menu. And then you just say Interactive Groom Splines. And you can just say, okay, I already have the name in there. Seems like that was the last thing I did in the previous model. So upper lashes, that's a good name for it. And then this is the approximate spline count here, 476. So it's a little high. It's gonna be dependent of the area you have selected, obviously. So if I have a smaller area, it's gonna give me a different result. So I'm gonna try a little smaller than that, like 640. Still too much. Let's see, 580. Pretty close, 560. Oh, that's right there on the top, right? Let's do it, like just be anal about it. Okay, 400 total. And then the length, that's gonna be what I'm gonna have to guess here. So I'm gonna keep it 0.8, just like, let's do a test first. Yeah, that's okay number actually. Yeah, okay. Okay, length considering what she has in here. I think it's a okay length to start with, but I mean, like all this stuff is groomable, so we are not gonna be worrying about it. So you notice that when I selected those edges, the hair only grew in those edges, right? In those areas. So the tricky part here is, for example, like if you wanna add hair outside of those bounds here, now you basically, like you're locked into that, you're constrained to that area. Basically, like you created some kind of, it's like you lock those areas once you added the hair just with those selections. So if you have the intention of growing stuff in different areas using the same description here, you're gonna have actually to transfer this to another model and probably start over. I don't know exactly if it's possible without being able to paint the masks with the multiple UDIMs like I have in here. If it's possible to simply like increase and grow those masks. But I know that if you have, for example, a single UDIM, you can actually paint the density And I think in that case, you can actually grow the mask like freely. In this case here, normally when I select those areas, I try to grow them bigger than they are supposed to be originally. So for example, if I'm growing a mustache, instead of like growing just the area of the mustache, I'm gonna grow pretty much like really tight against the nose and a little bit bigger than what I would expect. And then that way I can actually just like eliminate them if I need. But it's better to eliminate stuff than not have the enough geometry area to actually grow them. So so now I have them in here, but at this point I can actually switch to my XGen tab in here, and I can start grooming straight away. So one thing that you have to be very careful, and this causes instability with XGen, is when you're trying to groom stuff and you don't have the right thing selected. So for example, I just created this upper lashes, and I'm gonna expand this sculpting here. You're gonna see the edit is off. So every time you're sculpting, make sure you have the right thing selected. So in this case, the upper lashes, right? And you have the edit turn red, right? So in that case, now I can sculpt something. So let's try do a little first sculpting here. So see, like it's not symmetrical right now. So I'm gonna turn symmetry by going to, so for example, like if I click this little guy here, this is the groom. This is the one I use the most, like the comb brush, right? But I use stuff like, for example, like length to actually grow things interactively. And then I use this one to place things manually. So for example, if I need to add one single hair in a very specific spot, I can use that one. I can use this one here for cutting stuff. For example, if I have a stubble, instead of like growing the stubble in a certain size, I actually grow it bigger and then I shave it. Just like in real life, you just shave it, because that way you can get like the tip of it's gonna be kind of squarish, right? It all depends of obviously how you have set here, because if you can get like that, like to have a little bit of a thin point if you actually, you know, it's like tweak some of the attributes as well. But and then I use the stuff like this one here for thickness. One thing I do, and I'm gonna have to tell you, it's a cheat here in this case, because I'm so afraid of this brush here, the density brush. The density brush is the one that causes the most trouble. You know, it's like the most like unstable of all those brushes. If you keep like working with the other ones, you're fine for the most part. But every time you get the density brush involved, it seems like something goes wrong. So I'm gonna have to try to save before I do anything with that brush, or not touch it at all. So the thing that happens sometimes, if I'm growing the hair, and the hair is basically like it's basically like going too far forward, and I need to eliminate some of the hair, instead of like using the density brush because I know it might crash, I actually just like turn all that hair very tiny using the length brush, and then very thin. So basically like I transform that hair back to peach fuzz, and then I use that one to just like cover the face, because it covers everything anyway. And then I do the opposite as well. Sometimes if I have the entire head covered with peach fuzz, to create the blend between the hair and the peach fuzz, so you're basically going to create some kind of longer peach fuzz in there, I just grow them. I just use the peach fuzz itself to create the blend. In the past, I would use like a different description, kind of like a blending area, and just use that. But I just like started using the peach fuzz itself to do that. And I do this for the eyebrows as well, especially with like older people, right? It kind of like, it's nice to add a transition between the eyebrows and the peach fuzz by just like growing them longer and making slightly thicker. So it's pretty cool. So now we're gonna try something here, and it's not guaranteed it's gonna work, because guides sometimes have trouble with. If we have trouble with, we're gonna groom everything manually. But let me just show you this first. So if you go to Tool Settings, right, I have this one selected, right, which is the comb brush. You have a bunch of things here. So the brush fall off here by default is under Volume. I normally turn to Screen, because this way you actually force whatever you're seeing, you can actually groom, instead of like having to have like a certain angle, because it's all dependent of the angle of the camera, if it's based on the volume, and it gets pretty shitty sometimes. And then you have the symmetry settings here. So I'm gonna just turn on World X. So in this case, now I have symmetry, and I can actually groom both at the same time, right? So before you do this, let's try to add some guides in here and pray that everything is gonna go well. Just so it's not confusing, let me just take note of my settings for those guys, for the eyelashes, because I just saved them. I just saved them in there. so I can actually copy the attributes for the thickness. So I don't need to, you know, redo it. So let's see, the top ones I have like 0.016 and taper 0.700. And okay, and then the rest I kind of know what I'm doing there. So let's see the bottom ones. So I'm using a little bit, so the lower, just take note of that, 0.014 and then 0.700 as well. And then this one is actually, looks different in terms of profile I'm using, but it's not gonna change much. It's just to have a ballpark. And now I can actually delete this because I don't wanna add more confusion to you guys. So let's just make things simple here. So now we have our clean scene with just this description in here. So let's try to add some guides. So to add any modifier, you're gonna see there's a list of modifiers. You have clump, collision, cut, displacement guide, linear wire, noise, scale, sculpt, and spline cache, which is like a limbic stuff that I normally don't use. But and obviously the stuff I'm going to be showing you guys here is not like I'm not preparing this model for animation, right? So I'm not going to be caring too much. I'm going to sculpt freely because this is basically for a portrait. That's all we are doing. So let's go to add modifier. So make sure you have the top selected. So add modifier and then add a guide. So when you add a guide, originally you're gonna see this, it doesn't have anything in there, right? So it's completely empty. Before I do anything with the guide, let me save my scene because we don't wanna get into that loop we got yesterday. So let's just do Jessica Groom 1. Let's save this one. Okay. And then, so this guy here now, basically like it doesn't have anything assigned to it, right? It's just like an empty node in there. So you're gonna go down here, click the guide and go down here. You're gonna see there is an input guide. So you can actually just create it. It didn't show anything in there, which is good. Sometimes it's better if it doesn't show anything because in this case, I wanna have absolute control about it. I just hope it worked because if it doesn't, then we're kind of screwed. So you're gonna have to do it again. But so you see, like when I created that, when I clicked that button, it created a description inside of this description. So basically, like when you create the guides, it creates a brand new set of hair inside of the hair. So like it has its own set of splines, it has its own sculpt tools, it has everything. So basically, like it's kind of like a folder within that description, right? So it has its own thing. It's very independent from the rest, but influences everything that's around it. So under sculpting here now, make sure if you're trying to add some guides that you have this one clicked, the edit here, and not that one, right? This one was for sculpting the splines themselves, like the original ones. But this one here is inside of guides. So I'm gonna minimize this one so it's not confusing. So we're gonna be dealing with guides only. Click edit in there. And then now we don't have anything to groom, right? If I try to groom, nothing happens because we don't have any guides. So let's just try to add some of them manually with this button here, so the place tool. And then I have symmetry on, which is you turn here in other tool settings, right? So symmetry should be on right there for object. This one's object, but it doesn't matter. It can be world in this case because it's fairly symmetrical in there. And then just gonna make it smaller, so press B and then click and drag to change the size, right? In Maya, that's the way it does it. And then I'm just gonna try to start with the middle here. Let's see if I can actually get this to work. I'm gonna click one here. So that worked. So it created in both sides. So we have a little spline in there already. So that was easier than expected. And then another one right here, right? And then let's just grow those guys first. So make sure again, like you have clicked the guide in here, not the upper eyelashes, because we are working in this area here, right? So this is important to remember. And then we're gonna go to this guy here, which is the length tool. I'm gonna click on it. And just let's go to the tool settings. And let's see, so I have a very strong strength in there. So I'm gonna make it very small so I can actually have more control. And the increment is actually negative. So I'm gonna bring it positive, but very small as well, something like this. So I can actually start, oh, that's not it. I think it's the opposite. Let's see, why is the opposite? Huh, interesting. Let's see why it's going so small. Let's see if that helps or not. It's actually going the opposite way. Oh, you already like exploded on me. Oh man, the undo button did it. Yeah, that's a gunner. The scene is corrupted. Great job. I'm so glad I saved it. Let's try again. Let's start like with okay, so that was fast. Let's go back here. I have my guide. Let's try to, I have to remember not to undo ever, right? Which is like such a bummer. So let's do this guy here. Let's try again. Let's start with 1 right in the middle. Let's try to grow it straight away. Let's see. Mask selected value, blah, blah, blah. Sculpt scale. Okay, let's try this. Is it symmetrical? Yes. Oh, sorry, I forgot to turn on my guide. So this guy here. Okay, let's see what happens here. Let's try again. See why this is not working. Why my sculpt brush was not working. My let's try with the strength full on. Let's see if that happened to help. And then I have scale on. Oh, man, of course I have like a minimum length in here. That's why it's locked to minimum length, like the same. So all is gonna shoot back to the same one, the same size. So I can actually do this one. Let's see, the number I think we had was, I don't know, 0.8 or something like that, right? And then, so let's try again with this one. Sorry about that. Yeah, now it's growing. So let's grow it. And then 0.8 is basically like that first initial value that we used. And then I'm gonna grow a little bit longer than this. So I'm gonna put like 0. Actually, let's start with 1. I'm gonna grow it like this. So now I have that length. And now if I add some more of them, you're gonna have to make sure that you have interpolate in there, turn on. So I'm gonna create one right here, right at the edge, right there. And then this little guy, I can actually start to shrink it. So I'm gonna use the same stuff, just like I'm gonna use a control to reverse the order. So if it's growing, I'm gonna just like use control, and I'm just gonna do little clicks like this, just to shrink it back. And this is a cool feature, by the way. I didn't notice before. That's why I made that mistake. But it's a cool feature. For example, if you want to make like make sure that the stubble is always the same constant length, you can actually just lock it. For example, like 1 and 1 here. So it doesn't matter how you touch the sculpt tool. It's always gonna lock back to that length, you know. So I'm gonna do another one here. I'm gonna probably use just 5. So we're gonna try one right here. It has to be within that mask that I painted, right? If you try to click anywhere out, see, nothing happens. But if I click right inside of the mask, I should be able to get one. Let's see if it's both sides. Yeah. Did you create it there? I don't know if you created it on that one. Probably not. So I'm gonna have to create manually in there. Not a problem. Let's just turn off my symmetry for a second. And then I'm gonna create one manually in here because probably wasn't very symmetrical. So now I have one in there, and we don't need to be completely symmetrical. So we're just gonna add another one here, another one here. So 5, and then same here. So 1 here, and then here. If we need more interpolation, maybe like 1 more in betweens, then we can do that, but we might not need it. So let's just, so I have my symmetry off. So let's grow a couple of them here a little bit. So actually the symmetry for each one of them is independent. So if you turn symmetry off for one of those tools, if you switch to the next one, you're gonna have to turn it off as well. So they're all independent, which is cool. Sometimes you wanna keep it that way. So let's go to off, and then we just switch back here. So this guy here, let's grow it, click that brush, and then increment. It's like we had before. So let's try this. Grow a little bit. So I'm gonna create some kind of like you see, like there's a little bit of a gradient here, right? Very tiny, slightly bigger, a little longer. This one is gonna get a little shorter. Actually, the ones outside, they don't get much shorter. It's almost like gonna keep them slightly on the longer side, kind of like this. And then I can actually use those ones to fold them back in there. So there are a couple of controls here you have to look. Let's just save the scene again. keep saving it all the time, so we are not at risk. And you see, like, for example, like those guys, I can actually turn off just the guide, for example, right? I can click this one here, so the top node, right, which is the description, you can hide or not, or you can do the opposite, hide just that one and keep just the descriptions, the guides. And the guides themselves, because they are its own description, right? You can actually change things. If you go to the attribute editor right here, you click the description, and you can do, for example, like the scale of them. You can actually make them thinner, so this is not like too, aggressive in there. And then there are all kinds of controls. You even have the tapering here, just like you have with the actual hair, which is like, in our case is useless here because we're just, grooming for controlling the other stuff, right? So I'm gonna go to the comb brush, and I'm gonna start combing this stuff. And then again, at any time you can actually go back and grow more if you need, it's like, or just do whatever you need with the splines. So I'm gonna start doing this. I'm gonna start like getting those guys. It's symmetrical right now. So we're gonna start with the middle in here. Just gonna bring it up slightly like this, and then down right here. I'm gonna have to look at the reference, obviously, but normally that's what it does. It goes down first before it goes up. So I'm gonna start like maybe, before I do this, I think the best approach here would be to actually get from the top or the bottom and actually make this, so make sure that they're straight, but they are actually following the form of the eyelid, right? So kind of like spread them out like from the top like this. It's easier to actually control that way. Otherwise, it's gonna get into kind of like start looking a little wobbly. So, okay, so now we have them slightly down, which is good. And let's go to the side in here and just bring like this middle area down. Just make them bend and then bring back up. From here, let's see. Let's get this little guy. It's very sensitive, it's like, but it's cool because you have a ton of control. So if you want to do like very small tweaks, you can, for example, like in the tip in here, you can actually touch just the tip in there. So it's like very slightly with the little circle in here, and like very slightly just start bending it like this. Or if you want more influence, you can go more towards the hair itself. So like it's cool that, it's like you can actually control that. So I'm just gonna bring this one down too. And then this one up slightly like this. And they are too low right now. Let me see some references, because it's always good, right? Get some references. Let's see something from the front, how her eyelids look like. Even from here, this angle here, you can actually see they're going down and then up around there. So that, but they kind of like it's slower, kind of, down up. So I'm gonna try to refer to the front in here to try to get a little bit of that distance. And also, you see, like they are actually, if I look from the front, they're breaking slightly that little line, basically like the eyelid line in there. They're breaking very slightly right here in the middle. And they're very long in this area here, like I said, and very short around here. So I'm gonna try to actually groom in a way that looks slightly close to this shape. So let's go to the front, and then I'm gonna try to bend them enough so they can actually pass that little line in there. So the first thing you can do here, you see like there's this brush here that's the freeze brush, which is very useful. So you click this one, and now everything you touch, so let's switch to symmetrical, world X, then B, and then drag, just make smaller. And now if you touch those guys, let's see if I have like the right, so it's strength, like put 100% in there. So now I can actually freeze those guys, and now all my sculpting is not gonna affect them. I use this a lot for all kinds of stuff, and we're gonna use it again, just like for very precisely pick some of the hair, and then like tweak them later once we have the all the other stuff applied to them. So let's just bring this one. I'm gonna follow. See, like it's gonna go down, following that line from the eyelid, and just like starting to raise slightly there. So in her case, like this one actually goes towards the side slightly. So she actually probably does some grooming there. Let's see, this kind of like this. Let's make a little bit straighter first. I just want to make sure I have that angle. So maybe a little too much. So let's bring this one closer here, and then let's bring it down. And definitely going to have to go longer than what it is here, I think. Although it looks pretty good around there. Let's start with this. So it's kind of like slightly breaking that profile that I mentioned, like the top lid, right? So let's freeze this one. And then let's get the next one. So let's unfreeze that one. With Control, you unfreeze. And then just by clicking, you freeze it. Let's go that back here. And then let's just move it up. And then let me see from the bottom here. I think those ones go slightly outer as well direction. So you're just gonna get this back, gonna bend it like this. And lift this little guy right there. So around there should be okay-ish. So again, like it's going down around here, maybe a little bit more carefully right there. It's a nicer curvature, okay? So let's see the other side if it's okay. Looks good. Although they're not completely symmetrical, we actually did a decent job with that. So I'm just gonna bring it slightly to the front like this. Something like that. And maybe like lift a little bit. Okay, so let's freeze it. Let's get the last one in here. Let's see how she does have those ones going pretty much to the side like I have in here. Maybe slightly longer actually. Actually, I'm not sure. I'm gonna just leave it like this because like I said, anytime you can actually interact with it, just groom things, so it's awesome. I love XGen, man, when it works, It's like it's a joy to work because like it makes sense. There's a lot of tools you can do for grooming. It's like it makes things like super, it's like it's a beautiful piece of software. It's just buggy as hell. And that like really screws up the whole experience, It's like because sometimes you're enjoying yourself a lot and then all of a sudden you get like some weird crashes and things just like lose connection, It's like all of a sudden it's disconnected. It's like, and then sometimes you remember to save, sometimes you don't. And then you end up like pulling your hair. See what I did there? Pulling your hair. So let's see. Yeah, I see that not all of them. I think around here, they actually start changing direction. So it's almost like I need an additional one there if I want to go super precise. But I think it should do the job just by having it around here. Doesn't go much lower than this, which is interesting. Those ones here might need to go lower, but to go lower and you still preserve that point in there, that means you're gonna have to go longer. So I can try to do this with those guys. So let's get this guy here, and I'm gonna make it slightly longer. Let's see, did I get the correct thing? Locked floating, okay. What? It stopped working for me. Unless I'm using, it's actually maximized at 1. Duh, me again doing that. I keep playing with this and I forget that I'm using it. So let's do 1.3 for the maximum. It's actually a good control to have. It's just like I have to stop forgetting about it. So now it's pretty long, maybe too long, tiny bit around there. Something like that. So let's do this again. Just very slightly make sure that I have that line broken, like, it's like over the top lid around there and going down like it is. So that's good. And then the last one is going to be that little guy right here, which I'm going to make even smaller than this because this one's like they go very small. And that means I might need to add another area of blending in there. So it's just going to probably have to add an additional spline. So I'm just gonna shrink it too much. So in this case here, I'm gonna have to make my strength much smaller so I can actually control this better. But I think in terms of size, it looks pretty good. So that's this way. Yeah, they get very tiny around here. So I might need to add another one. So hopefully it's gonna do the right thing, and it's gonna just add it without complaining. So let's see this guy here. So add one by one. Let's add another one here, and another one there. Okay, so that's probably like gonna grow them a little bit this way. Let's create a nicer blend. Okay, and then let's just let's see. In her case, some of them go in different directions in there. So let's just get this guy to do this. Oh, and I noticed something that I'm gonna fix. See this guy right there? It's actually going kind of like, there's a little bit of an S curve in there. So I'm gonna try to fix that because I don't like it. It's gonna influence the whole hair. So I'm gonna just bring it down. So now it's perfect. And then that one as well. So I'm gonna freeze this one. I'm gonna unfreeze that one. Actually, symmetry off. Just this guy right there, yeah. So this guy right here. So I'm gonna just pull, just to remove a little bit of that S curve right there. So right there. Looks nice. So now that we have that, if we turn on the hair itself, we should see something that's nicer, I guess. So something like this, right? So now we still can see it, and we can still play with those values. And now it's actually nicer to see everything together because we can actually have a perfect idea about what's needed. So let's try, start like by growing those guys a little bit more. Let's see strength. Let's grow this guy a little bit more, very slowly. This one as well. And then I'm gonna freeze them. Get that guy. And then let's do a little bit shorter, possibly. Very slightly. You see, like that in between here would be nice because the way that's so spread out, I think it's gonna be nicer if I have better control. So I'm gonna click my guide. Don't make sure that you click your guide if you're trying to add guides. Otherwise, things might go pretty wrong. So I'm gonna click in there. So add one more in here and one more in here. And I'm gonna freeze this guy and this guy. So let's go back here. Yeah, that's a nice curvature. It's a little bit more of there's a little bit more of shape in there now. So I'm gonna just like bring this out just slightly. Just have make sure that nothing looks like an S curve. Just like more like just a simple curve. A little bit higher. Something like that. So yeah, this is the ballpark. So we're gonna start like doing some tweaks in here to actually try to get this to look more like eyelashes now. So let's just turn off our guide for now and just look at the eyelashes themselves. It looks pretty long at the tip in there. And then now we have an option here. We have a bunch of options, actually. I have the option to actually go back to my guides, add more guides so I have more control, right? Or I can just keep them in there hidden the way they are. And instead of like adding things under this guide node in here, I can just go back to my top node and I can add like an override for the sculpting. I can, for example, use a modifier in here, not inside of guide, but in the top node. And you can just say like a sculpt node, add another sculpt node. So a sculpt node, you can actually add on top of things. In this case here, anything that's at the very top is actually overriding that's stuff that's underneath it. So if it's at the top of the chain in here of the stack, then basically like that means I can actually override. So let's see what happens if I use the scale brush here, the length brush, but instead of like using the guides, if I'm using those little guys here, let's make symmetrical again. World, and then look at this. If I do this, I have the sculpt brush. So now I can actually fine tune it just very slightly. I'm going very, very subtle with it, right? And get that nice length perfect all the way across. I can even make those little guys a little smaller here. So basically this is an override, not an override, it's kind of like a sculpt on top of whatever guides you had in there, right? So the guides is still gonna try to modify things, but if you have this stuff here like changing drastically everything, the guide's gonna have a hard time tracking what's going on, because if you really change things, it's not gonna be, you know. But for example, in the case of guide here, if I turn off the guide, this is what happens. Basically, like I have a sculpt layer, that's this one, it's just doing this, very slight, but the guide is actually what's commanding everything, right? So the guides are important still, so I can always keep them in there. But then from that point on, I can actually go crazy with like sculpting, you know, so I can just like refine those forms just the way I want. So just gonna do fine tweaking. And then obviously if you are planning to animate or something, maybe adding more splines and having more control with the splines is gonna be easier than controlling things like I'm doing here individually, right? But again, this is kind of like the part that I like, that's the more artistic stuff. You just like style things, you know, it's like on the fly. So now we have this, let's add another modifier here. So the guide for now is basically like is dead right there. It's just saving the, you know, the curvatures and everything for us. What we're gonna do, actually, we're gonna add a modifier here that's gonna help a lot, which is the clump. When I first click it, it's gonna look very weird. So this is what's gonna happen. See, like it's very little, you know, it's like spots in there for it to, you know, like to perform a good job, right? But the clump has a bunch of different attributes in here. And if you scroll down, for example, like under the attribute editor, and you select the clump, so the attributes that look like this. So I have all kinds of parameters in here. So this is the tip, right? Like basically like you can go back and forth with the clump. That's clumpy all the way down. But the most important thing for us here is the density. Right now it's just 1, right? And you can see that the slider goes from 0 to 1, right? But in NextGen and also in Arnold, in Maya in general, it's like this is kind of like you can overwrite this this number, right? Like it goes to 1, but what happens if I do 10 in here instead, right? Then I got 10 of those. Let's just like, since we are here, let's save it again, because I don't want to be at risk of losing anything. So 10 looks cute, but still pretty fake, right? So let's try, what about like 80? 80 looks a little nicer. What about 200? That gives me a nicer result, right? 200 is starting to look pretty nice. I don't know if 300 would be overkill, but we can try. It is not gonna change much from that point on. So 200 should be like a decent value, right? And then there is one thing here. I mean, like they are not like perfect or anything. They are clumping too much, right? But we have controls for that, so we can actually play with them. We can add, like, for example, the clump effect here. You can just like bring it slightly, or you can go the opposite direction like this and make them cross, right? Sometimes you get like a nice effect that you actually do the opposite way. So they cross, you know, over. And then you can add another clump just to get them to match. So you can actually use like 2 clump nodes. So at this point here, let's just keep a little bit less than the maximum. So something around here. And let's look at the shape of those hairs, right? Right now they look very thick. Actually, the thickness I already, based on my experience, I already put like a value that would be similar to what I wanted, but it's still not quite there. So if you go to the upper eyelashes, so basically like the top node again, the first thing that's going to open here is the tab that's the most important one, that has all the attributes for the hair. So the first thing you're going to do, you're going to see a little difference in here. You're going to turn on the tube shading. So you see, like now they become like little tubes, right? So they become this, it's easier to see the thickness and everything. And the other one I'm going to turn on is going to be, if you scroll down all the way here under Arnold, instead of like using ribbon as a mode, I'm going to do thick. So we're going to use both of them. So that one and this tube shading. And now we have a bunch of different parameters here. So remember when I saved my scale, I used like a 0.016 for the scale right here. So it was pretty big, right? Looks pretty big. But then I use this 0.700 here for the taper. So that's what it does, right? You want to have this type of effect for the eyelashes. So we're going to do like a 700 here. But also you can control that same way I did in there. You can control even further with this slider here. Well, not slider, but the ramp, right? So the way I work with this guy, I actually use instead of like linear, I use a spline. So I'm gonna click spline. So you click the little dot, select spline, click the other dot, and here select spline as well. And then anything in between is just gonna be like spline from this point on, right? So in real life, you would have like the thickness, the thickness point probably would be close to the root, but I normally cheat that to get a little better effect. So I normally make it a little bit smaller, and then I go higher. So for example, if I grow this, just click this little button here, it's gonna grow it. So I'm gonna go smaller, and then I'm gonna go bigger, like this. Another one around here, and then I'm gonna go smaller again for the tip. So now you have this type of shape. So it goes it starts a little bit smaller, maybe like a smaller area like this, just to have a little bit more of a blend in there. And then it goes down and then down again, right? If you go down too much, obviously it's gonna start eating part of it because it's gonna get too thin. You can just go something around there. And even the root a little bit thicker, maybe, something like this. Now I have a more interesting result, right? Like still not quite there because, I mean, like we are not doing too much just yet. So if I go back to my clump, so let's play with this a little bit more. So what happens if I go to negative, like I said before, right? I go -1, then I get this type of result in there. It looks like the eyelashes, I don't know, like I went more like on the high side of things, you know, like because I thought she had a lot of it, but it's looking a little bit too dense, looking at her in here. So if that happens, you can go to your base right here, and you can actually reduce the density. So if I'm at 1, let's try 0.8. So 0.8 is a little bit more natural now. So yeah, I might go with this. But the thickness of them, I think I might increase a little bit because, like I said, since she has the mascara, I might actually get a better result with maybe like something around maybe 18, something like this. And then you start with that. And then obviously from this point on here, everything still works. So the clump is actually not overriding, but it's on top of the stack from the sculpt. But the sculpt, I can still sculpt stuff. So if I want to make this area a little bit longer right here, I can still do that. Sometimes it's better to turn off the clump temporarily, so it's easier to actually see what you're doing. So let's just go to my tool settings and increase the intensity just slightly. And I'm just gonna grow a little bit more of those guys. And I'm gonna keep just those tiny ones just right there, right? So maybe like grow those guys a little bit more as well right there, and then scale down that one. So now you get all this stuff in there. I can actually do a little bit of a grooming right here with just those little guys, just like bring them out, and then I'm gonna start like maybe adding some variation as well to get some of those guys to go in certain different directions a little bit slightly. But this is the type of stuff I'm trying to avoid, like create those S curves. So I'm gonna have to be careful with that, because it looks very unnatural when you have all those things. But even here, you see like they're already like pointing slightly in a different direction. So just try to, you know, get them to look a little bit more straight. Oh, see, I'm doing the opposite of straight. I'm actually making things worse. So let's just bring this up a little bit. And then now we can actually add some more variation to the entire thing. There are ways you can actually use the scale that's basically like under here. If you go to scale, you can potentially use like a noise to control the scale. So for example, like you have 1 in here, right? Which is basically like, oh, interesting. This one is locked because I'm using the guides. I think that's what it is. But yeah, if the guides are actually overriding the overall length of it, so the scale is probably not going to affect it. But you know, it's like if you want to, for example, like remove the guide, actually transfer this to another object, I can show you guys probably another day, and you can actually use the scale. But I try to do everything kind of manually. So I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna start by doing a couple of things here. Let's use this thickness brush here. That's the width brush. And I'm gonna actually start removing some of the thickness of those guys inside here. It's gonna, oh, too much. So let's try and see what the correct amount here is. So like the minimum amount is 0.01. So let's keep it 0.10. And the strength like very small, so I can actually control better, even smaller. So, oh, still going too small. Let's see if that's what it is. Okay, so it's going down, down. Okay. So like almost disappearing, right? So I'm gonna get some of those guys, kind of like a little bit of, like I said before, a little bit of a gradient, right? And probably some of those guys, not those guys here, I think they're gonna be fine in there. And then, for example, like if I wanna add some more variation for certain ones, I can just pick some of them. And then either I can do with the freeze, right? Like if, for example, like if I use the freeze brush, you just like pick a few of them, like this guy. Let's see, right here. It's my freeze right there. So one like that. Yeah, you can pick a couple of them, like another one right here, another one right there, and things like that. Maybe not that one. If you do this kind of stuff, you can actually be able to create some interesting variations. And then obviously you can pick much more than that. You pick like a bunch of them, for example, like 10 or 20 at times, and then just alternate and select a bunch of other ones. And then now you have this option here, for example, if you're grooming, if you're brushing things and combing it, you can actually just like turn off this, actually the invert frozen effect. So if you click this one here, now I can brush just the frozen ones. So if I use the length brush, I can grow just those guys. Oops, not this guy. The length brush invert frozen right here. So I can just grow these little guys that I just selected. So it's gonna affect just them. So I'm gonna have a little bit more of a variation in there, right? And then that's how I normally do with everything. And then, but the thing is, like, we're still looking for that, it's like a little bit more clumping in there. So I can add the clump back. And then I can try to use like a secondary clump. So let's try to see if that helps or not. So clump again. And then again, we're gonna go to the attributes, clump and clump one. So that's the one we were using before. So clump one is the new one. And then this one, we're gonna use the density of, let's see, 250. And then let's just add a little bit of it. Let's see the difference with and without. I can actually add some volumize here as well. Sometimes it helps. Maybe add volumize on this one as well. Let's see. Nah, that one is fine. Just the top one I think is helping. And then there are a bunch of modifiers you can use here. You can add little twists, for example. Like just to show you here, of course, like in this case, we're not going to add a lot of twists and anything. But if you scroll down all the way, you have like all kinds of controls. You have the curling here. And the curl, all those controls, you're going to have to actually tweak the curves. So if I crank the curl here, for example, I'm going to have to go to the curl scaling here and then play with that curve. So you're going to get like this type of stuff. So you're going to have like little curls, and basically what they're doing, they're obeying the little areas concerning the clump itself, right? So they're just going to be spinning around the same axis of the clump itself. So this can actually help as well to add some variation. And then you have things like noise, for example. If you go here, there is the noise. Again, it's not going to affect if I just crank it in here. But then as soon as you go to this little guy, you can start playing with it. So let's see. Something like that. And then eventually you end up like with something that looks very decent. But I mean, like I do a lot of poking around. I experiment with a lot of those modifiers. And then obviously I'm gonna pick some of them, for example, like this entire chunk, and I'm gonna use like the freeze button and just like brush them back and get them to look nicer. But that's basically how I start the groom, So you get like a little bit of the idea, I guess. But then it's obviously like how much time you're gonna be spending to create all the variations and everything, But just like by adding a few nodes in here, just like the clump and the sculpt brush layer, you already get like some decent, fairly decent result, you know. You guys have any questions so far? Let's see, this guy here, I have the invert froze on, so it's not gonna work. Yes.
So do you typically like to prefer to break up the upper lashes from the bottom lashes and just kind of keep every description its own separate individual thing?
I do, yes. Okay. For example, like if it's a beard, right? That's not the case here, but you're gonna see in the other classes later that, for example, like if I'm sculpting a beard, a full-on beard, I'm gonna sculpt the mustache first. So I'm gonna groom the mustache first, and then I'm gonna do like the goatee, so just this area around here, the lip, and then the entire beard after. So the beard are gonna be like a single thing, unless it's like it's just like the entire goatee thing. But I normally do it three parts. So basically like the mustache, goatee, and then the rest of the beard. And then for the rest of the beard, I kind of end up around here. And then I have another description that's just the sideburns. And then the other one that's actually the hair itself. And then I use the peach fuzz to actually do the blend between everything. That's kind of like...
So for like you just said for the peach fuzz, you kind of make like a transition layer between the peach fuzz and the beard, or
in the
hair
past,
or whatever.
In the past I would use just like a band of hair in there. It would be a different description. But then over time, I just decided to just use the peach fuzz and grow it, you know. So that's what I do. For example, like in her case, you see like right close to her hair lining here, there's some blonde hairs in there, very thin. And then she has quite a bit of peach fuzz around here, some long ones on the side of her face. So I'm gonna have to be gentle with that. I cannot exaggerate too much. Yeah, so it's a combination of things, you know. It's like you have the option of using multiple descriptions, but the thing is like it can get a little bit of unstable if you have too many of them sometimes. So I try to keep it as low as possible, but with a right amount of control for myself, you know. Let's just save what we have here so far. I'm actually risking here because I'm saving everything on top of, you know, of the same scene. But hopefully I'm not gonna get too much trouble in there. So for the color of the hair, right? Like we were talking about all this stuff, but this is basically like just the default shader. So he has this funny color, right? So let's talk about the shaders for Arnold. So Arnold has a specific shader for hair, which is this guy here. If you go to shader and you click the hair, standard hair, just name this one. Yes, I'm just gonna keep hair, because one thing I do normally, I actually use one single map for the entire color of the entire thing, and I just like if you paint, for example, in ZBrush a color in there that's like black and white, you can actually use that to drive the melanin color of this of the hair, right? So I'm gonna be just like calling hair like an overall thing. And one thing that can get a little buggy sometimes when you click the name of basically like the top node here, the top description, and you try to assign, sometimes Maya doesn't disconnect the old default shader that's connected in there. So I can show you how it works, but I think in this case it's gonna work. So I'm gonna click this one, then right click and then assign. So we already changed color in there, so I know it worked. If it didn't work, you probably would have to go to the attribute editor in here, go to a node in here, or like a tab that would be called like something hair from Maya, right? You would click that tab, click select in here, and just press delete, and then it would eliminate that, and you would have to reassign it again. But in this case here, worked fine. So let's look at the attributes now that we have the hair. So under Jazz hair in here, you're gonna see a bunch of things. So this is the default color for the hair. It starts completely black, right? So that means that the melanin is at full at 1 in here. If I keep going back in here, you're gonna see getting more and more white until it gets completely white. So the melanin is removed. That's basically like for an older person, right? You're gonna have like melanin at 0 in here. And then you have the base color, and you have some other controls, for example, like the tint in here. The tint and the diffuse, actually, those ones I don't use much, because this is just like if you have some artificial coloring with the hair, so you can create that effect. But usually I just use like the natural colors, right? In her case, I might need to use some stuff like to add some more of the blonde stuff. But just like with the melanin here, if you go around here, for example, that's already kind of blonde at this point here, around like 0.15 or something like that. And then you have the redness of it. So you can get like more red. For example, if a backlight hits it, you're gonna see more red to it or less. So you can actually increase or decrease. You're gonna see it visually here as well. So you see like it's a little, it's gonna get more red here and then less red. So I normally keep this one a little lower. And then the randomize actually is gonna create more variation. If you wanna create the effect of like salt and pepper, sometimes you can use a combination of the melanin with the noise map assigned to it, or you can use the randomize as well, or both combined. Sometimes both combined is even better. So I'm just gonna keep this one high because she has very dark eyelashes, but I'm gonna keep it like maybe like a 0.8 or something like that. Let's do our first render to see how this works. And you see like it still needs work, like the clump is still like, you know, it's like very clumpy, right? I need less clump in there. Maybe like play with those values a little bit more and get a little bit less of a clump in there. Because right now they are kind of like, you know, twisting too much into the same direction, and you know, it's like maybe something more like this. Yeah, less clumpy, like something like that would be looking a little bit more natural. And there's a brush in here, that's this one here, that's actually clumps things together. So you can use that one as well. You can set like to a radius, a very small radius. Let's see if we can do it here. So let's see that guy. Then I'm gonna set the radius very small, like this, something like this. And let's see in our tool settings. So there's floating locked intensity 0.2. Let's see if it's too intense. Oh, let's see, this guy's here. So I can actually bring some of them together like intentionally, right? But the thing is like at this point, they are kind of finding the clump in there, the node. So if I do this manually, I can actually just pick the ones I want to clump as well, you know? So that's another alternative, you know, it's like if you want to create something, for example, those two guys coming together. So it's a cool, very like precise tool as well. So you can use the clump, but the thing is like, it's always gonna fight with top nodes, especially if you're using like negative clump, like I'm using some of those. So it's gonna be fighting them, right? But it's pretty crappy around this area here. You still have to do some work on it. But there is one thing too that, yeah, in this case here, the clump doesn't have a slider, but the sculpt has one. So for example, like you can always play with the sculpt stuff that you did, for example, like to remove some of the effect by using the, you know, the slide itself. But the clump, you're gonna have to actually go to this slide here to actually make sure that you're not exaggerating things too much, or yeah, I'm gonna have to play it to get like the right amount for everything. But let's do a little render here. So let's see if it's gonna take too long or not. So let's just put that 6 in here. And then I think the size is pretty big because I did that big render yesterday. So let's do maybe 900, which is my resolution for, you know, posting stuff on Instagram. So let's do Arnold render view. And let's do a little render. Should take a little time just to calculate, and just gonna pull it. And then for the bottom ones, I'm gonna do the same thing, basically the same procedure, just with half of the amount of hair that I had at the top. That's basically what I'm gonna do differently. It's getting hot in here. So let's see, it's starting to, my machine is starting to work. Let's see if this is gonna start here. And then we can move to something else. Let's do some of the peach first. Do the simplest.
So Chris,
yes.
I have one question. In terms of melanin, you said that you're using a melanin map. So it's just as simple as just plug and play, and it should just read the values? Because I've been trying on the last days and I haven't got many results. I don't know if you can show us a little bit how you plug it.
Yeah, normally I plug that map. I can show you, for example, like I can open another model and show you how it's plugged, but it's basically like just a black and white map, like you said. In the case of, let's see if I have, let's open up the ZBrush file for Stan Winston, for example. It's a black and white map, so I can actually put like the dots. Everything that's white in my map is going to become like a black hair because like the maximum amount, right? Like it's set to 1. And then everything that's black is going to turn like white. So it's kind of like the opposite effect. But let me show you this. So let's try to open that scene with Stan Winston while it's rendering in the background. So Stan right here. ZBrush, print this one. Same exact poly count for the HD, same model. Let's see. Yeah, the thing that I would say that I did in the past, for example, like I use the same map, including for the peach fuzz, and I think that's the only thing that doesn't work. If you can use the same color for the entire thing, you should be fine. But the peach fuzz should have its own shader, you know, because it's definitely a different quality of hair. It has a little bit of a translucency to it. But let me show you this. Yes. Hello.
I think it's just myself that I leave the microphone on.
Okay.
I just waiting for them up to load.
How's your work going, man?
Well, I just, I think as everyone else, just I'm stuck with the porosity. Horrible, man. You really give us a very hard job. I think I spent the whole previous week just making alphas. It's crazy.
Yeah, right.
It's like I think as you mentioned in one of the comments in the group, it's like it's not only about how deep, but also all these interconnections. So to make sure that
exactly
the pore connect between each other, so they don't look to separate. So
yes,
it's just so many details, man.
Yeah, the thing is like it's a that problem of kind of like nailing one single pore, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, it's interesting. I noticed that like with the past classes as well, and it's funny because it's so random. You know, it's like some people sometimes just get it straight away, and then some other people like have much more experience. Sometimes like just like get into like, oh man. And even I like in the last class I was teaching, I actually had to redo mine like 3 times. Yeah,
but you know, it's a cool exercise because even there are some porosities that I was not even aware of. Like I thought, for example, in some areas where there are so many wrinkles,
yes,
the porosity they should kind of fade out. But the truth is that you start zooming in on the reference, and the pore is actually there. Like it's not even. It's just very interesting. It's like I would never even expect porosity in certain areas like that big.
Yeah, like in the case of this guy here, you see like this is the same map for the entire thing. So everything you see in white in here was actually turning into black for the renders. Let's pull up this guy here. Let's see. LF Chris personal, and then let's see Stan Winston right here. Images. My computer was sleeping for a second. So let's see one that has a good close-up. Let's see, this guy here is a close-up. So that stuff, for example, like I noticed that in the reference, he had more black hair around there. And the thing is, like I was trying to paint the hair around there black, but then the hair was showing black around here because you have to paint the root, right? So you have to actually pay attention to that. If you want hair to be black around here and they are growing that direction, you're probably going to have to paint black in your map right here. So actually it's going to show black around there. So it's kind of like it's tricky that way, right? But you see, like, for example, like this entire thing, like everything here, all the how you call like the salt and pepper effect, it all comes from the same map. So like all this stuff here, it's just
out of curiosity, Chris, so you're playing with the melanin, which is going to affect the whole hair strand, right?
Yes.
And then do you play with anything like a fall-off that it can, have gradient between root and tip? Like that?
You see, that's a good point because I never actually used it, but I think you can. I think there's a way to do it actually to create like I know what you mean. Like for example, like if someone has like a dark roots, right? And I believe you already saw this like in some tutorial, someone doing like using this control to actually keep it black. I could do some research and bring it back, but I never used like for my stuff so far, But I might need actually because she does have a little bit of some color. For example, it's slightly more blonde in the roots sometimes. Because that's where I think like probably now that you're going to work maybe a long hair or something. Yeah, exactly. So probably gonna need to do that. But I'm gonna do some research for sure.
Cool.
Yeah, so now you see like sometimes if you keep the melanin pretty high, although I use like, I don't know, like 800 something, it still sometimes looks overly dark. So it's sometimes I just like, instead of using that, I decide to actually go a little bit lighter. So I just reduce the amount of melanin. So right now it's like 831. So let's see how it resolves in here. If it's too dark, I can actually reduce a little bit more. Let's see how that's gonna play out. Yeah, that's like a few of them I can see they're already breaking that line of the eyelid. So that's what I wanted to happen. I might have to make them a little bit longer even. But first I'm gonna have to resolve the, you know, the amount of clumping that I'm seeing there. So you see like it's a little bit on the dark side. And it might be fine, but I don't know. I'm gonna have to do some renders to see. The old one was definitely working. So I'm gonna have to see, for example, the color of the old hair I had in there too. But yeah, I mean, like, it's gonna be a good first pass to actually start tweaking from now on. Some of them are a little messy around here. So this area seems like I might need another guide or maybe a little bit more of a grooming in there. But I mean, like, we spent like not a lot of time, right? If I wasn't talking and trying to explain everything, that would take me probably like to get that state, probably like 15, 20 minutes. That would be it. But yeah, it took me an hour just because I'm explaining things. But yeah, so that's like our first pass for the hair in there. And then obviously you have all those controls for the amount of specularity. For example, if you want to go a little bit more specky with it, you can turn on the anisotropic roughness as well. Is another option you have. You can actually reduce the roughness, so you can go back to, you know, to a lower roughness in here to get a little bit more shiny, and then crank the index of refraction to get even more shiny, right? So those are things that are gonna leave for you to play with. And then the base color here, basically, you know, it's like you can increase like and add crazy colors here if you want to try to, you know, it's like to add some effect to it, right? I normally keep it white, and then everything goes back to white if I reduce the melanin, right? So now let's do a little bit of the peach fuzz stuff. So for the peach fuzz, we're gonna create a bigger area for the description, obviously, because we're gonna have to get everything but inside of the mouth and inside of the nostril, since we're gonna be growing some hair in there, and then the bottom area here too. So we're gonna try to eliminate some of those areas. So let's try this. Let's go back to my modeling editors and then go to the UV editor. And since we have this already laid down in there, it's gonna be easier to just pick stuff like this. So let's see, we don't want any peach fuzz in the lips either, right? So we're just gonna try, let's try this. Let's start with selecting a UV. So I'm gonna click like little points like this, here, there. So let's see, I know that I'm gonna have to grow for the most part in this area. And then not the inside of the mouth. I'm gonna need this area. And not the bottom. And then the ears are gonna grow in the ears as well. And I don't even know what those other parts are right here. Let's see what they are. Yeah, I'm not gonna need this here. Actually, I will, because I'm gonna grow. Yeah, it's gonna grow all the way around. So now that I have some of those selected, I can just control click here and then say to shell. Now I get this whole area selected, and then I'm gonna need this one here as well. So like this area here. Let's try to shell again. And let's see how far it's going. So it's going far in there, so I can actually reduce some of that stuff, but it's eliminating the inside of the mouth and the nostrils and the bottom here. So that's what I need. So I'm just gonna turn this into polygons. So Control F11. And I can just like manually deselect some of this stuff. So let's make sure I have the symmetry on. So it's off right now. So topology right here. So now it's symmetrical, and then we can actually paint stuff here. So I'm gonna click this one, and then let's just turn off my UV altogether and grow my brush a little bit like this. I'm just gonna paint the lips. Oops, switch back to polygons. So face. just gonna paint this back right there. Can actually leave a little bit, but maybe not. We're just gonna eliminate altogether from, I'm not gonna leave any fall off in there. Because I'm definitely not gonna be painting anything on the lips themselves. And the peach fuzz, I mean, like you can get away with a lot because it's so thin, right? It's nice when you can see close to the lips though, so I'm gonna keep them close enough. Little mustache. Little woman mustache. And then let's go back here. And then let's try to eliminate some of those guys. Again, like I'm not gonna go super precise with it. It's, you know, it's like it's also up to you guys if you wanna go super precise with it. I'm just gonna get the ballpark around here. Actually, I can actually grow. Let's get a little bit more than what I would expect, so I can actually eliminate those guys later. And let's see. So those are the lips, and then I think we are growing stuff in the eyelids as well, so we're gonna have to eliminate that. So let's see. Get rid of that, and around here, let's get rid of those guys. And oof, I'm fighting them now. There you go. And then let's go back here and turn off our eyelashes for now so we can actually see. Select back, and then, oh, my right click's not working. Face, it's already selected. Got this guy. And let's go back around here. Yeah, this entire area here has to go. You really don't want to grow anything around there. It's like it's a thin little thing, right? Like the Vella's hair, the peach fuzz, but it's like it's the kind of thing that you don't want to grow at all in those areas that are supposed to be super shiny, you know? Otherwise, it's not gonna look very real. It's gonna look like everything's gonna be a little fuzzy in there, and we definitely don't want that. I'm gonna reduce the size of my brushes. It's a little hard to control here. Okay, so around there, and then the bottom ones especially. Just gonna get from here. Even around here. Some of them are kind of internal there. Let's see if I can get inside a little bit. Right there. See with a bigger brush. Yeah, let's go back to my UV so I can actually see this stuff. Otherwise, I mean, like I could abandon it now and consider it done, but let's make sure that I don't have too much stuff selected in there. I don't want to mess up with that. Actually gonna keep this area with a little bit of hair too, so right there. And so let's see my UV again. Modeling editor. So let's see if I can get rid of anything else here. That's the border in there. Eyes, the inside, yes. Okay, is there anything else selected here? Looks good. No. Just make sure, like the lips in there. And lips. Okay. Yeah, this looks good. So now let's grow some peach fuzz. Let's start with, yeah, if I was more careful, I would completely eliminate this one as well, but I'm not gonna do this. So let's grow hair here everywhere and see what we get. Nostril, maybe, I don't know. I don't know if I'm gonna grow too much in there. Maybe I should. Let's try to grow some in here. Since we are here. Oh, actually that's inside. We don't want that. Interesting, it has kind of like a sharp line in there. Wow, that looks like an artifact. Look at this. I think I actually, did I move stuff around? Because it definitely looks out of place. It happened with things. Oh, that's not good. Look at that. Seems like I moved things. Seriously? What did I do? I don't know what I pressed because it seems like everything moved very slightly. And I don't like that. You know, I think what I'm gonna do here, because I don't want to lose the work I just did. So let's try to work smart with this stuff. So let's assign the pitch fuzz first, and then let's use a morph target to bring this back to model. That's what we're gonna do. I'm not gonna waste time. So let's go to create, and then add groom bow splines. I'm gonna put like peach fuzz, and now this is gonna be a gas game here, right? Because I mean, I have no idea how many you're gonna need. Like I said before, like for the scalp itself, if you're talking about just the hair, it's about 150,000. But those guys, they are everywhere, and it's super dense. So let's see if I have a density of 300, how much you get? 500,000. That sounds kind of about right. I think we're gonna need more than that actually. But let's do like a length of 0.1 to start with. And the scale pretty thin, but maybe you could get a little bit thinner. No, it's not gonna show. I'm gonna have to start with 1. And then for the CV count, I can use something very, very low, like 8. So let's apply this. Let's see what we get. We got a lot of hair, right? So that's good. That's good. So like the length is not too bad, but still pretty long. But at least it's there, right? So let's do this now. I have this guy. I'm gonna turn it off, and let's bring. You see, like I really changed something. I moved the object or something, but I didn't realize it. So let's do this import, and then let's get my.
Hi, Chris.
Yes.
Is it possible to paint the mask on ZBrush and use it as a density mask instead of selecting all the polygons?
Huh? I don't think like if you have multiple UDIMs, I don't think you can do it. But if you have a single UDIM, no, I think it uses its own format. Although it's like I think you can save in TIFF. Yeah, I never tried actually. I never tried, but it's a good one to try.
Okay.
Because yeah, if it works with a TIFF, for example, when you save in Maya, you should be able to actually read a TIFF. But yeah, I think it should. Yeah, it's something to try. So let's see, just mid resolution. So let's bring this one here. Gonna import it. So this is the old, the latest one I had imported actually. So let's get this back to model. Select the one I just imported, this guy. Then select the one I just moved stuff around, and then go to animation, deform, blend shape. Let's bring this one to bloop. Yeah, something really changed in there. So now I can just go to my delete history, but not delete a history of everything, because you have the both, right? You have delete all by type history, and you have delete by type history. I'm gonna delete just this one, not everything. And now I can delete this guy. Boom. So let's see how our hair is behaving right now. It's right there, and then the eyelashes still there, so that's what we want. So now let's do a little big grooming here, right? Because first off, we're gonna start with, we're gonna have to define like the length of them and the amount we're gonna need as well. And then the only way to do this is, for example, like look at my super low resolution pictures of my wife. We're not gonna be able to do that. But if you get a site like that one we are referring to a lot, right? Daniel Boschung, I don't know how you pronounce that. So that's the one we're going to be using to refer to some of that stuff. So let's see someone with the similar, let's see, she has like a kind of like Irish face, I guess. My wife's pretty much Irish. So let's see, let's get this lady here. Let's see a little bit of her peach fuzz, if you can see anything. Let's get around the nose. That's always a good one to see. You can see how small they are. Look at that. And very dense, huh? It's like it's a lot of them. It's almost like the density I have is not enough at all. I would have to have more density to get like something similar like that. And then obviously, if you look from a distance, it's overkill because you're not gonna see them that much, right? But at least like we can have a little ballpark. Let's get something like this. And then let's move to the side here. And then let's play with the thickness first. So click the main node. And then the width scale, I think the node I had taken before, I was using 0.004. Let's see if it's still valid for here. To tell you the truth, I think it has to go thinner than that. So let's try 0.002. Very, very thin. And then obviously the length is very long, right? So you can use the scaling here. So let's do a scale of maybe like something like this. It's gonna get a little longer in certain areas, but we can do this interactively. But right now, let's see, like I'm at 0.3% of what I had before. And just by looking at the edges in here, I think this is actually similar to what we have in the reference. It's just that they're super thin. It's gonna be hard to actually nail the, it's like the thickness, but we're gonna try. So we're gonna do the tapering. You're gonna use a lot of it because they get super thin. And I think here I'm gonna go even thinner than that. Let's see, something like this. And maybe the root I can get a little bit on the small size as well. So the smaller in the root, a little bigger. And then still bigger and a little small again. Something like this. And now we don't have any variation, obviously. There is a nice little modifier you can use here. And I use this modifier for everything other than the eyelashes, right? Like for hair and everything, is the noise brush, the noise modifier. This one actually adds a lot of effect, And you see, like by default, it makes a mess like that, like pubic hair all of a sudden, right? But that's because of the preserved length is not cranked in here. So I'm gonna just like bring it back to the default. So it's just gonna curl them without actually changing the length. And then the magnitude, actually, you can actually bring it down a lot. You just add some variations, but without like becoming completely random, right? So they're fairly organized in the reference in there. It's almost like, they look almost like parallel in here. The difference is more like the direction itself, obviously, but also some of them are a little bit longer than the other ones. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna keep the magnitude very small, 0.5, something like that. So it just adds a little bit of a direction in there. And then before you go with the scale down in here, what we can do, we can actually keep it the one we have before. And also the thickness, I'm gonna crank it again because I want to make sure that I'm seeing what I'm doing here. And I'm gonna do some grooming. I'm gonna, it's like groom this stuff a little bit. So gonna turn off the noise so it doesn't slow me down. And then under the sculpt, I'm gonna turn on edit. And then there are a couple of things in here with XGen. I mean, like there is something that was supposed to be very useful, but it normally bothers me a lot, which is this thing here. So under the comb brush, if you go to the tool settings, you're gonna notice that there is this, let's see, where is collide with meshes, right? And you can keep like very low, like a 0.1, for example. It never behaves exactly the way I was expecting. So for example, like if I try to groom this to prevent intersection with the surface, right? If I try to groom it and you look very closely, you're gonna see that there's a little bit of a bend that happens. Maybe not with those guys because they're so low resolution. Yeah, this one I think might work as well. Yeah, this one might work because with the longer hair, sometimes it creates a little bend at the very root of it and it doesn't look good at all. So if that's happening, then I'd rather turn off the collide meshes and be very careful the way I'm grooming things and brushing and then try to get a good result by using that. So basically like what I do, if I don't have that on, I have to pay attention of the angle I'm brushing. So for example, if I'm doing the top of the nose, I'm gonna have to come for an angle like this, kind of like parallel to me. So the tip I would brush around here, right? But then obviously if I go more towards theater, I'm gonna have to do this. But now with the collide with brushes working, which is apparently is working finally, then in this case here I can actually go and then you know, it's like do it like from any angle here, and it should be able to actually prevent intersection. So I'm gonna go and I'm gonna try to groom this starting here, kind of going outwards. Oh, look at that. It's actually affecting the bottom area. Sometimes that happens too. Kind of goes across things. For example, I'm grooming here and then all of a sudden like it's changing things over there as well. And I never get it why it does that. See, like, see, it's affecting like this area right here, and I'm actually grooming right there. Look at that. And I think it's like some bug with the symmetry. Let's turn off the symmetry for a second, just to experiment with that. Yeah, but that off is fine. Let's try to do this asymmetrically. And then again, like I have my noise off, right? So I can actually just to really make sure that the direction is going correctly. And then after that, you can add the noise back, because the noise or any modifier you add, especially the clump, it really slows down everything if it's at the top. So before you do any grooming, any combing, I would just like turn everything off and then turn it on again. If you get to an area like this that you don't wish to have any hair in there, what I do instead of like using the density brush, I actually make it super tiny, almost like at 0. I don't think it's possible to use 0. And I completely disappear with them. I add like the thickness of like 0, 0, 0, the minimum possible and the minimum size possible. And I just disappear with those things. I keep them in there, but they just like don't show up at all. That's how I deal with you know, the whole problem about like not painting with the density stuff, because I'm so afraid of the crashes. I got like, you know, I'm just kind of like a garlic for Dracula. That's the density brush for me. See, those ones here now, they're not even moving, see? And that's because of this whole thing, the collision collide with meshes. If I turn it off, now I can actually brush them. So that's why, for the most part, I try to keep it off and just like try to be very careful with the angle I'm brushing. That's the thing, you know, it's like little things here and there that could be improved, you know, other than the crashes, obviously, but those things really, you know, if you're like in the middle of producing something, it might really bother you. But the fact that you can actually groom the entire thing, everything you see is going to be rendered and everything in real time, that's pretty impressive, you know, that you can do this. When I started doing CG, that was like in the 90s. This is like not even dreaming about doing this. I started with a Amiga 500 that I thought I would be buying to actually do some amazing art, because I was seeing like this amazing checkerboard kind of, you know, environment with a little bouncy chrome ball on top. And I was like, oh man, this is CG. That's amazing. I was a teenager, man, like 16, 17 years old, I think. You know, I was already working in a bank as an apprentice, and I told my mom, I'm going to save money. I need to buy this machine, man. This is incredible. And then I ended up buying, and in Brazil, I mean, like everything was overpriced. And first, we didn't have access to anything, right? So the stuff we would get would be normally like have to cross the border from Paraguay to be able to have access to anything. So you normally would pay someone like, oh, here, and then the guy would find a way to bring it to you. I was like, as a kid, I didn't even care about it. I was like, oh, sure. What? Does the guy bring it? Sure. Here's the money. So the guy brought one, and then it turns out the machine was too weak to do all the computer graphics stuff. So I ended up like using it as a game machine. But yeah, always fascinated, man. As soon as I locked my eyes into like CG back in the day, I was like, oh man, I want to do this stuff, you know. And now everything's so easy with ZBrush and all this awesome technology, you know. Even the buggy stuff is still pretty awesome. I don't take it for granted. It sucked before. Everything sucked before. Let's see. Let's turn on this collision. Let's see if it does a better job around here. Yeah, here I think it's gonna work. Very fuzzy in there, huh? But not fuzzy enough around the nose. So I might have to increase the density of this entire thing. Let's try that. Let's see. If I go back to my to the original tweaks that I did. So let's go back to Peach Fuzz and just add like 0.02, I think I had, right? Yep. And then I had like a small size as well. So the scale was 0.03, so 0.3 actually. But oh, now it's actually not behaving the way we expected because it's too small. So I'm probably gonna have to groom it again. Yeah, so I better do this way and just like get what I have to get without the changing the scale too much, because yeah, it might be a little tricky. So let's do this, and then let's look at the density with the actual size. Looks like pretty good actually. It's not too bad. It's pretty similar, but it could have a little bit more density. Let's see what happens if I just crank this one a little bit. So for the for this one here, the base. So if you go to the base, it's the multiplier set to 1. So let's try 30% more. See if my computer is going to be kind. Okay, got some more in there. Yeah, I think that's slightly better. Not a little slower, but still groomable. And then, yeah, it's like I said yesterday, I mean, like my machine is fairly good. I mean, like it's not the top machine. It doesn't have like all those fancy multiple graphics card or anything like that that people use for rendering, right? But it's a nice refurbished machine that you buy for $1,000. So I was like, it's not like a huge deal. And I remember when I bought it, I didn't have the money to pay for the machine, man. It was just like I got the machine. And it was like, oh, I gotta pay this in a few months. So I think I did like 6 months through eBay. So I paid like $1,000 in 6 months, and that's the machine I'm using here. It's still pretty awesome. But I wish I had a sponsor, like someone like, oh, here you go. Here's a nice computer for you. but no, that's okay. I think for what I need is actually pretty decent. Not gonna be spending. I have 2 kids and a house to take care of, so plenty of money it goes into those things. So let's see. So around here, for example, if I need to do like some, grow those things now, I can actually use the length brush, right? And then, for example, like in areas like the side here, probably like on the sides of her face, I'm gonna need to have some more length in there. So just gonna go to Tool, make sure I have symmetrical, and the scale length. Okay, so it's very, very little intensity, so I should be able to control pretty well. So let's add some length in here. Let's see how much I can get. Yeah, a little bit. I don't know if it's gonna be easy to see from there. Let's just make bigger for you guys right there. Otherwise, the compression is gonna completely destroy the experience, like, or seeing anything. And then obviously you can do this, right? Like if you have the minimum and the maximum here, you can actually set it up to in a way that actually doesn't go too long. So let's see if I put like 0.2 or actually 0.2. Is that the one we were using before? Let's increase the length, the strength in here. Let's see full on. Let's see how big it gets. Yeah, not big. So let's see. Maximum length. I think it considers like 1 as the base, like 100%. So basically I'm gonna go a little bit over 1. So let's go to 1.5 and see what it does. No, actually it's much more. Oh, I was wrong. Let's try 0.5. Still pretty long. Oh, interesting. I thought I had that number right here. Let's see, 0.05. I don't understand yeah, that's too small now. So interesting. So let's see, 1. That's already too long. No, it's not too long. It's longish. Yeah, I don't want to make like a werewolf wife, otherwise I'm gonna be screwed. But she does have longer here. this area is pretty cute actually. And okay, around here. And then obviously I'm doing like full on intensity. I can actually put lower than that so I can actually control better. Let's do a little bit more of a transition, right? So if you have a little bit more control, you can get some interesting transition in there. And then now, especially around the ears here, it'd be nice to actually then have them longer, like this. And then obviously inside of the ear, you're gonna have to eliminate a lot of that stuff. We're gonna have just like at the edges here. So now I already grew a little bit, so I'm just gonna groom and actually comb everything around there. And then those ones are gonna start adding some direction down. And again, like the collide meshes here is not helping me at all. It's actually stopping me from grooming. So I'm gonna have to turn it on off again. And then this kind of stuff here, it's just like, it's how much time you want to spend doing it. You know, it's like you can get like a very nice directionality and get like all the stuff looking pretty realistic, you know, or you can just like add a little noise in there and get some variation and call it done, you know. But the thing is, like, if you want to get the effect when you look from the sides, like the silhouette to look correct and the lighting to actually read as if it is kind of like a velvety kind of effect, you're probably going to have to spend time. As everything in life, right? Like if you wanted stuff to look good, you spend time doing it. There's no like super automatic solution for this kind of stuff. There's a very automatic solution for, you know, like reprojecting your mesh, right? With that plugin, was that Z wrap or something like that. That looks pretty cool. But for this kind of stuff here, I mean, like it's very manual labor, right? And that's the part that we enjoy anyway, right? At least I do. I enjoy the hard work because it pays off if you put in enough effort, you know. And that's the part that, for example, like up to this point, we are dealing like little pores and all that stuff, right? It's still a pain in the butt and it's hard to do and all that stuff. But this is when things start to come together, you know. It's like it's the stage that I enjoy the most, which is basically like when you start like tweaking the shaders to look more realistic and you add all those little effects and hair here and there and you groom things, you know, it's like everything starts coming together and looking more and more realistic, you know, it's like if you're doing correctly every turn, you know. It's like I posted today about the uncanny valley stuff, you know. It's like I really dislike that term, and it's like it's not my intention at all to create something that's supposed to pass as something real. If I can do that, great, you know. But as you can tell, I mean, like everything is done manually. And, you know, it's like when it comes to painting maps and stuff like that, and there's no way if I wanted to achieve something that's completely realistic, there's no way I would be doing this, you know. It's like I leave this door open so I can actually exercise some creativity and flexibility and margin for error. Otherwise, you're going to be chasing your tail forever, and you're never going to be able to reach that goal of hyper-realistic stuff, right? We call hyper-realism a lot of things. I even call my stuff sometimes hyper-real because it's kind of like it's almost like a term that's a little bit more abstract, you know, but not in a sense that's more than realistic, because it's not. It's never going to be totally realistic, you know. It's to me, like the most important part is that things look like the characters look like they have soul, you know. If I can manage to make a character to look like they have thoughts or something like that, you know, it's like something you can actually look in the eyes and say like, oh, it looks like someone who would be alive, you know, but not necessarily like, oh, it looks like a real person. So that's the part that freaks me out, you know, when people say like, it looks like a real person. It's like, no, it doesn't, you know, it doesn't at all look like a real person. If you start like really looking close for everything, like the human body is way too complex, man. I don't think there's a supercomputer out there or a network of supercomputers capable of, you know, recreating with perfection like a human being, you know, with all the details. It's like, it's too much, man. How many petabytes, you know, you're gonna need to do that? I don't know if it's possible. Another thing I do from time to time, like I turn on the, you know, it's like the wireframes, so I can actually see things a little better as well. And that way I can actually see the direction is slightly better. And then as I get like closer to those areas, like close to the eyes in here, sometimes the hair gets, the peach fuzz gets a little longer as well. So sometimes I get those guys to look a little longer and just brush them to the side. So just turn on the symmetry here again and pray that it's not gonna screw up when I try to sculpt here, and then all of a sudden it's gonna be affecting some other area. But I'm just gonna try to add some length to it. Very slightly around here. It's too much already. So let's go a little bit lower than that. Okay, so that's too slow now. That's just right. Okay, cool. Gonna add some more length around here. Gets a little bit more bushy. And obviously this stuff's gonna be so thin that's gonna be like invisible from a distance, and it's gonna be very nice when you look from a close-up shot, right? But for the most part, it has to look invisible. If you're seeing from a distance, that means they're too big already and too thick. And I did this for Stan Winston. If you look at that portrait, I didn't have the time because that was basically like, I have to do like the classes back to back, and I didn't have the time to finish the portrait ever. So it's the kind of stuff I'm gonna have to go back, increase the density, and then decrease the thickness of it, and just like improve that. As with all the other portraits I wanna do, I wanna pose them, I wanna create actual portraits and not just like boring, you know, unposed characters. It's not my intention. It's just that I run out of time, or I get bored and I have to move on and do something else. That happens a lot too. So yeah, this process here, I can spend a huge amount of time just like grooming. So let's not, yeah, well, I was about to try to do like the grooming for the inside of the nose, but the process would be exactly the same, you know. It's like, so today, basically like what I tried to cover was like introduce you guys to XGen first and show how it works. And then, and from this point on, like play with the guides as well. So for the guides, that's basically how I'm gonna be growing the eyebrows on Monday. And the way I create this is basically like I create a V shape. So if I show you here in ZBrush how it looks like, so for example, like in XGen, next week, you're gonna be doing something like this. Let me just paint here so you can actually see. But it would be something like this. I would create like some splines coming like starting from the top like this, like probably like a couple of them like that, guides, like guide splines. So like 5 of them, and then another 5 coming from below like this. So basically creating those V's like this. And then I would basically like use those ones to control half of the eyebrow to create that little peak at the top. And then from this point on, I would start like adding more variation and maybe like adding some of those little guys right here, right? Like those little guys are gonna start changing direction. And then around here, change direction, right? But then for the base of it, they're gonna start with something like this. So basically like we're gonna be using some guides just to create a matrix for our eyebrows. And then we're gonna go from there. And then today I was supposed to actually go and explore the, you know, it's like the hair inside of the nose and all that stuff. But it's gonna be basically the same process. Select the faces, right? And then groom the hair, and then play with the thickness and everything. I show you how to play with the profiles already. Already show you the, you know, it's like it's possible to plug a map. Actually, I can show you where you plug the map actually. So if you go to Peach Fuzz and go to your, so this one has the hair physical shader, that's the default. So let's try the eyelashes that we already have the shader assigned to. And then here, basically, like where it says melanin, that's where you're gonna plug the maps. So you're gonna plug the map right here. And then for the maps that I have from, let me just open that other file to show Marlon actually. So let's turn off this thing and just save it with another name. Let's open very quickly here the other file with Stan Winston. So I can actually show you the way that the map is painted. Painted actually is the same paint you saw here, right? But the way that the map is actually color corrected in Maya, I think I'm cranking the exposure. So maybe that's what you're missing in there. So you see like I have black and white in here pretty strongly. So like very white and like close to very black, but it's a very dark gray actually. So when I have this open file here, let's see, Stan. Stan Winston right there. So let's open the scene. Let's get the latest. And I think I showed you guys before. This is like when I first open it, it's completely screwed up because the XGen kind of like lost some connection in there. I think so some file got corrupted. And then every time I open this file, it looks broken. So so I have to fix it every time I open it. And then like if I save it after I fix it, it still shows up broken next time. So it's kind of like hilarious. So let's see. Yeah, see like it's amazing. So if I go here to fix that stuff, every time I have to do the same. I go to my Peach Fuzz, for example, and I go to the base, and I just like rebuild everything. So just rebuild. So it's gonna fix the ear, and then for the eyebrows, same. Then for the goatee, the same. And that's basically it. It's kind of fixes it. But the way I have it plugged, so you can see it here, let's get like the main hair, for example. You're gonna see here, Stan hair is the shader assigned to it. Goatee. Oh, the goatee seems like it's using a different one. All right, that's surprising. This one is, oh man, this looks different. But I think I thought I have everything assigned with the same. This is the hair. Okay, Peach Fuzz has the same for some reason. Mustache has Stan hair. Okay, so mustache and the main beard, Stan hair as well. Okay, so those guys, and the eyebrows probably, let's see. Oh, the eyebrows, for some reason, I think I'm using a different shader, but let's see if it's the same map assigned to it. Yeah, it's the same hair color assigned to it. But for some reason, I think I wanted to have some more control. Let's see if the difference here is actually the melanin randomness. I have 360 for randomness, and then for the main hair, yeah, probably like I assigned the same color, but then I'm adding some more salt and pepper effect by using the the melanin randomizer. But for the main hair, which is the one assigned to the most things, like the mustache is the same. So if I have to open it here, so that's the maps that came from ZBrush, right there, like just like black and white with the polka dots. And then here, I think is basically what I changed, Marlon. I think you can try this. So under the color balance, I'm actually cranking the exposure from 0 to 2. And then I'm playing with the alpha gain here because I think the intention here is to actually remove some of the blackness of the hair. And in all, actually, it's the opposite in this case here. So instead of, if it's one, it's basically like completely white, I think I'm bringing slightly down just to darken the whites a little bit more, something like that. So that's basically what I'm doing. But I think what you need in there for your maps, if you're not seeing anything different, try to play with exposure and really crank it, you know. For me here at 2 was working, but sometimes you have to crank the exposure like to 3 or 4 or even 5 sometimes to see stuff. So try that. Try to plug the map in there and then do that, you know. And then I'm gonna look into the route to tip.
Thanks, Trace.
Yeah, no problem. I think that's what I had as well before, you know. It's like it wasn't affecting the hair color at all. And I cranked the exposure. I was like, huh, look, it's working now. So something to try. And then the tip to root or root to tip, I'm gonna have to look into it. But I remember in the past I was able to do it. So I'm pretty sure like every single hair that you create, it has a UV assigned to it. So I'm gonna take a look at that. Anyway, today I think that's it, guys, for the hair stuff. And for the next week is basically when we're gonna be digging into the hardest part, which is like the long hair, which is like I'm gonna try my best to get that stuff like as good as possible using just the interactive grooming and the eyebrows. I think the eyebrows you guys gonna get a kick out of it because it's quite simple to do, to get like a nice looking airbrow like from the get-go, and then obviously is the amount of time you're going to be spending to tweak it that's going to make the entire difference, right? And for the eyelashes here, you see like in his case he has very long ones, And I even left like some of the selection here. Those ones are frozen. That's probably like I was in the process of like nitpicking a few of them and just growing or shrinking. So that's what I'm going to be doing with Jessica. You know, it's like select like a bunch of random ones and then grow them slightly, select a bunch of them and then shrink them slightly, add some variation the thickness the same way. So, you know, it's like if I go a little longer, I'm going to make it a little thicker, something like that, you know. And you see like not very fancy, and they are not in line at all, right? Like they're kind of like up and down. So you see them in different positions. So that's important to get like an interesting result, you know, stuff like that, you know. It's like you look closely, you're gonna see that they're not in a line. It looks like kind of like a doll. If you have everything in the same line, it looks like a doll, you know. But if you have them like in different places, it always looks better. So, all right, guys. This weekend we don't have any reviews, so we're gonna have plenty of time to play with all those different things I spoke about. Like this week was like plenty of stuff, right? To digest, and so yeah, have at it, and then keep posting in the group. You know, it's like I know I'm pretty slow with the group these days because I'm dealing with the website, so I'm kind of like trying to find time for everything, and you know, my day is not long enough. But I every time I can just look in, you know, it's like post something in there. So by all means, like keep posting, and then I try to respond over the weekend. So thank you so much, and I see you guys very soon.
Thank you, Chris. Have a good night.
Thank you, you too, guys.
Thanks, Chris. Have a good
Really
night.
appreciate it.